My sister stole my fiancé before our wedding, so I gave her a gift she won't forget. 3 weeks before my wedding, I found them together in our childhood bedroom, not just kissing, planning their escape to Vegas while I was supposedly picking up my dress alterations. My sister was wearing my engagement ring on her right hand, testing how it looked. My fiancé was Googling flights on his phone. I stood in the doorway, invisible to them, listening as they laughed about how naive I was, how I'd been working double shifts at the hospital to pay for our dream wedding while they'd been meeting in hotel rooms for 6 months. My sister giggled that she'd always been the prettier one, that he'd settled for me out of convenience. She actually said, "I feel bad for her sometimes. She tries so hard to be special, but she's just ordinary." He laughed. "The sex is better with you anyway. She's too uptight." The worst part? They were using our family cabin for their affair. The same place Dad proposed to Mom 40 years ago, where I'd imagined bringing my own children someday, where Grandpa carved all our initials into the old oak tree before he died. My sister was lying on my childhood bed, wearing nothing but his dress shirt, the blue one I'd bought him for his birthday. She stretched like a cat, completely comfortable in the space where I'd once shared secrets with her, where we'd whispered about our future husbands during sleepovers. "When should we tell her?" she asked, tracing patterns on his chest. "After Vegas," he replied. "Let her think I just got cold feet. She'll blame herself, like she always does." That's when something inside me crystallized. Not anger, something colder, more precise. The bedroom looked exactly the same as when we were children. Same pink wallpaper with tiny roses that Mom had picked out when we moved in. Same twin beds with matching quilts Grandma had sewn. Same bookshelf filled with children's stories about sisters who loved each other. But now those twin beds had been pushed together, creating a makeshift double where my sister was destroying everything sacred about our childhood, where she was rewriting our history with betrayal. I watched her run her fingers through his hair, the same gesture she'd used to comfort me when I was upset, the same loving touch she'd given me during Mom's cancer treatment, when we'd held each other and promised we'd never let anything come between us. Instead of screaming or throwing things, I backed away silently. They never knew I'd seen them. That night, I called off the wedding, told everyone there was a family emergency. "Had to be hospitalized for exhaustion," I said. My sister played the concerned sibling perfectly, offering to help with cancellations while secretly texting him about their new freedom. I let them think they'd gotten away with it. For 2 weeks, I played devastated. I cried on command, accepted their comfort, even let my sister help me return wedding gifts. She was so helpful, so caring, always asking if I needed anything, stroking my hair like we were children again. "Maybe this is for the best," she said one afternoon while helping me box up decorations. "You deserve someone who truly loves you." The irony was suffocating. She'd steal glances at her phone, smiling at his messages. Sometimes she'd excuse herself to take calls, claiming it was work. I'd hear her whispering sweet promises from the kitchen, planning their new life together. "I love you too," she'd murmur. "I can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore." During those 2 weeks, I watched her performance with clinical fascination. She'd arrive at my apartment with tissues and ice cream, ready to comfort her heartbroken sister. She'd make sympathetic noises while I sobbed about my canceled future. She'd even suggest we have a girls' night to cheer me up. But I noticed things. How she'd volunteer to handle specific vendors, always the most attractive male ones. How she'd insist on returning gifts to certain stores where she knew he'd be shopping. How she'd encourage me to skip family events where their absence together would be too obvious. She was orchestrating our deception while playing the supportive sister. Every kind gesture was calculated to maintain her cover while advancing their relationship. Meanwhile, I was learning things about both of them they'd never imagined I'd discover, like how he'd been skimming money from his law firm's client account to pay for their hotel rooms, how my sister had been calling in sick to work so often that her boss was considering termination, how they'd already put deposits down on an apartment across the state, using money from the joint account he and I shared for wedding expenses. I discovered he'd taken out a credit card in both our names without telling me, maxing it out on jewelry for her. I found receipts for lingerie purchases made on days he'd claimed to be in court. There were even medical records. She'd been to a fertility clinic, exploring options for when they started their new life together. They'd planned everything, right down to the timing of breaking my heart. But I was planning too. Every day, while she held my hand and he sent consoling text messages, I gathered evidence. I installed tracking software on devices they'd carelessly left unlocked. I befriended hotel staff who remembered them. I hired a private investigator who specialized in infidelity cases. The PI was a middle-aged woman named Detective Rivera, who'd seen everything twice. When I showed her what I discovered, she whistled low. "Honey," she said, "this isn't just cheating. This is fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. You could destroy them both legally." "I don't want legal," I told her. "I want personal." She understood immediately. Detective Rivera taught me things about surveillance I'd never imagined. How to recover deleted files from cloud backups. How to access security footage from businesses. How to trace financial transactions across multiple accounts. Most importantly, she taught me to be methodical. "Evidence without documentation is just gossip," she said. "You need timestamps, corroborating sources, and chain of custody." I became obsessed with thoroughness. Each hotel receipt I found was photographed, dated, and cross-referenced with their alibis. Every text message was screenshot and backed up to multiple drives. I created detailed timelines mapping their movements against their lies. The evidence gathering became therapeutic, almost meditative. Each new piece of proof was another step toward justice. Every lie I uncovered was validation that my instincts about their deception had been correct. I learned that my sister had been stealing small amounts of cash from Mom's purse during family dinners. Money she claimed was for gas or lunch, but which security footage showed her spending on lingerie at expensive boutiques. I discovered he'd been billing personal errands as client meetings. Haircuts became consultations with expert witnesses. Shopping trips with my sister became depositions at courthouse gift shops. His timesheets were works of fiction funded by his clients' trust accounts. The depth of their deception was staggering. They'd created an entire parallel relationship while maintaining the facade of caring about me. Every family gathering where she'd hugged me hello, every goodnight kiss from him, every concerned text about my well-being, all performed while they plotted my humiliation. I discovered they'd been taking photos together at our family events, pictures of them exchanging meaningful glances during my birthday party, video of them slow dancing at my engagement celebration while I was in the bathroom. They'd been documenting their secret romance against the backdrop of my life. The most damaging evidence came from her laptop. She'd kept a digital diary chronicling the affair, complete with detailed descriptions of their encounters and her thoughts about deceiving me. Entry after entry describing how foolish I was, how easy it was to manipulate my trust, how much better she was than me in every way. One entry, dated just a week before I caught them, read, "Sometimes I almost feel guilty watching her plan this wedding, but then I remember how everything always comes so easily to her. Dad always liked her better. Teachers always praised her more. Boys always chose her first. For once, I'm taking something she wants, and it feels amazing." Another entry detailed their sexual encounters in disturbing specificity, including how they'd role-played scenarios about me discovering them. They'd made my potential pain into foreplay, but the most revealing entry came from months earlier. "She'll never suspect me. I'm her baby sister, her best friend. She trusts me completely. It's almost too easy. He said she's boring in bed anyway, just lies there." I showed him what passion really looks like. By the time we tell her, she'll realize she never deserved him anyway. Reading those words, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. This wasn't just about infidelity or broken trust. This was about someone who'd spent years studying my vulnerabilities specifically to exploit them. Someone who'd weaponized my love against me. I also found evidence of their future plans. They'd researched divorce lawyers for me, calculating how much alimony I'd be entitled to, and how quickly they could marry after the annulment. They'd planned my entire life without me, discussing where I'd live, what job I'd take, even who I might date next. They'd turned my existence into a problem to be solved. The night before they planned to elope, I gave her the gift. It was beautifully wrapped, with a card that read, "For my sister, who always takes what she wants." Inside was a USB drive. She looked confused, turning it over in her hands. "What's this?" I smiled sweetly. "Just plug it into your laptop. You'll understand everything." Her face went white as the files loaded. Security footage from the cabin, hotel receipts I'd found in his wallet, screenshots of their text messages I'd recovered from the cloud backup he'd forgotten about, photos of them from restaurant security cameras on nights he'd claimed to be working late. But that wasn't the real gift. The real gift was watching her realize that everything she thought she'd hidden was about to become very, very public. "You can't," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You wouldn't do this to family." I tilted my head, studying her face like she was a fascinating specimen. "Family wouldn't do what you did to me." Her hands shook as she scrolled through folder after folder of evidence. 6 months of betrayal, documented in excruciating detail. "Please," she begged. "I'll end it right now. I'll tell him it was a mistake. We can go back to how things were." That's when I started laughing. Not the fake laugh I'd been performing for weeks, but genuine amusement at her desperation. "Back to how things were? You mean back to you pretending to love me while sleeping with my fiancé? Back to him kissing me goodnight after spending the afternoon inside you?" She flinched like I'd slapped her. "I know about the credit card," I continued conversationally. "The one he opened in our names to buy you that tennis bracelet. I know about the fertility clinic. I know about the apartment deposit. I even know about the fake emergency that pulled him away from my birthday dinner. He was helping you move furniture into storage." Her laptop chimed with an incoming email notification. She glanced at the screen and her remaining color drained away. "What did you do?" she whispered. "I sent everyone an invitation," I said, "to a different kind of celebration." The email I'd sent to our entire wedding guest list had gone out at exactly midnight. The subject line read, "Wedding update, a love story exposed." The email wasn't just a simple message. I'd created a comprehensive presentation, complete with a timeline of their affair, photo evidence, and even audio recordings of their conversations. Each piece of evidence was meticulously labeled and sourced. The presentation opened with a wedding photo from their engagement party, the two of them toasting to our future while secretly planning my destruction. Then it showed security footage from that same night, catching them kissing in the hotel parking lot while I was inside thanking guests for their gifts. But that was just the beginning. While she stared at her screen in horror, I pulled out my phone and showed her the text I just sent to Mom and Dad. "Come downstairs. There's something you need to see." My sister's hands flew to her mouth. "No, you didn't tell them." "I didn't have to tell them anything," I replied calmly. "They can see for themselves." Within minutes, I heard Dad's heavy footsteps on the stairs. Mom followed, her voice tight with concern. "What's wrong?" "Your text sounded urgent." I gestured to my sister's laptop, where hotel security footage was playing in crystal clear detail. "I thought you should know what you raised." The silence that followed was deafening. Dad's face went through several emotions: confusion, recognition, then a rage I'd never seen before. Mom just stared, her hand covering her mouth. "How long?" Dad's voice was deadly quiet. My sister couldn't speak, just sobbed into her hands. 6 months, I answered for her, while I was working overtime to pay for a wedding to a man who was sleeping with your other daughter. Mom sank into a chair. "The family cabin? Among other places. I have footage from 14 different hotels, 3 restaurants, even the parking lot at her office." As I spoke, I watched my parents' faces transform. Dad went from confused to disgusted to coldly furious. Mom's expression shifted from shock to heartbreak to something harder than I'd ever seen from her. My phone started ringing. Him, probably wondering why his phone was exploding with angry messages from wedding guests who'd received photos of his extracurricular activities. I declined the call. There's more, I said, pulling up another folder on the laptop. Financial records. He's been embezzling from his law firm to fund their affair, using money from our joint account. There's even forged documents where he listed her as his emergency contact instead of me. Dad was reading over my shoulder, his lawyer brain processing the legal implications. This is fraud, he said slowly. Multiple counts. He could go to prison. That's his problem, I replied. My problem was having a sister who stabbed me in the back and a fiancé who never loved me. The room fell silent except for my sister's sobbing. I let her cry for a moment, then opened another file. There's something else you should see, I said. Her diary entries. I read aloud from her digital journal, watching Mom's face crumble with each cruel word. Dad's hands clenched into fists as I recited my sister's thoughts about how easy it was to manipulate me, how boring I was, how much she enjoyed taking something I wanted. When I finished reading, Mom looked at my sister like she was seeing a stranger. Who are you? Mom whispered. I don't recognize the person who wrote those words. My sister finally found her voice. I never meant for it to happen this way. We fell in love. You can't help who you love. The slap came before I'd consciously decided to hit her. My palm connected with her cheek with a crack that echoed through the room. Love? I snarled. You call betraying your sister love? You call destroying someone who trusted you completely love? She held her cheek, tears streaming. You don't understand. It wasn't supposed to hurt you this much. How much was it supposed to hurt? Give me a number. What's the acceptable amount of pain for discovering your sister and fiancé are planning to humiliate you in front of everyone you know? Mom finally spoke, her voice barely audible. Get out. My sister looked up hopefully. Mom, not her, Mom said, her eyes steel. You, get out of my house. Now. You can't mean that. Dad stepped forward. You heard your mother. Pack your things and leave. Tonight. Where am I supposed to go? That's not our problem anymore, he replied. Maybe your boyfriend can help you figure it out. Oh, wait. He's probably busy explaining to his law partners why client funds paid for hotel rooms. As if on cue, my phone rang again. This time it was his law firm's senior partner. I'd sent them the financial evidence 2 hours ago. I answered on speaker. This is Attorney Hamilton. I'm trying to reach anyone who can tell me about certain irregularities in Mr. Peterson's accounts. I looked directly at my sister. This is his ex-fiancé. What kind of irregularities? Unauthorized use of client funds. Falsified billing statements. We've contacted the police. If you have any additional information, I have extensive documentation, I said. Financial records, hotel receipts, everything. I'll email them to you immediately. The conversation with the law firm continued for several minutes. They wanted details about the timeline, the amounts involved, the methods he'd used to hide the theft. I provided everything they requested while my sister sat frozen, watching her new life crumble in real time. After I hung up, my sister was hyperventilating. You've ruined everything, she gasped. His career, his reputation, his life. He ruined his own life, I corrected. I just documented it. But you didn't have to destroy him completely. I didn't destroy anything, I said calmly. I revealed what was already there. If exposure destroys someone, they were already destroyed. They were just hiding it. My phone buzzed with a text from him. What did you do? My firm just fired me. The police want to talk to me. What did you do? I showed the message to my sister. Want to answer him? She shook her head, still crying. I'll handle it, I said, typing back. I gave everyone the truth, something you're allergic to. Over the next hour, as my sister packed her belongings with shaking hands, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Messages from wedding guests ranged from supportive to shocked to absolutely savage. My college roommate, holy shit. I always knew she was jealous of you, but this is psychotic. My cousin, I can't believe they thought they'd get away with this. The audacity. His best man. Dude is finished. Nobody will ever trust him again. My high school friend. I'm deleting all the photos with her in them. Can't stand to look at her face. A family friend. Your grandmother would be rolling in her grave. She raised you girls better than this. But the most satisfying message came from our grandmother. I'm ashamed to share blood with that girl. You deserve so much better, sweetheart. Some messages included screenshots of their own conversations with my sister and ex-fiancé. Apparently, both had been making frantic calls trying to control the narrative. His story was that I'd had a mental breakdown and fabricated evidence. Her version was that they'd fallen in love and I was seeking revenge for being dumped. Nobody was buying it. By the time my sister finished packing, word had spread through our entire social circle. Her phone had apparently been buzzing just as relentlessly, but with very different messages. As she dragged her suitcases toward the door, she turned back one last time. I'm sorry, she said. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am genuinely sorry. I studied her face, looking for any sign of real remorse. All I saw was regret that she'd been caught. You're sorry you got exposed, I said. There's a difference. The distinction mattered. Sorry for being caught means you'd do it again if you thought you could get away with it. Sorry for the action means you understand why it was wrong and wouldn't repeat it. Her apology was entirely self-serving. After she left, I sat with Mom and Dad in the kitchen. The house felt different, cleaner somehow, like an infection had been removed. How long have you known? Mom asked. About the affair? 3 weeks? About who they really were? I'm still learning. Dad poured himself a bourbon. What happens now? Now I rebuild, I said, without people who think betraying me is acceptable. But that was only the beginning of what I'd set in motion. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from him. When I finally answered, he was frantic. You have to fix this, he demanded. Call your dad's lawyer friends. Make them drop the charges. What charges? I asked innocently. You know what charges. The embezzlement thing. It was just borrowing. I would have paid it back. With what money? You spent it all on hotel rooms and jewelry for my sister. That's not— Listen, if you don't help me, I'll tell everyone you're vindictive, that you manipulated evidence. I started laughing again. Tell them what you want. I have security footage, financial records, and witnesses. You have desperation and a soon-to-be revoked law license. You're destroying my life over a mistake. A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday, I replied. This was a calculated campaign of deception spanning 6 months. Don't insult my intelligence by calling it a mistake. I loved you, he said, his voice breaking. I really did love you. No, I replied calmly. You loved the idea of me, the nurse with a steady income and rich parents who would make your career easier. You never loved me enough to be faithful. I hung up and blocked his number, but the calls didn't stop. He started calling from different numbers, showing up at my workplace, even sending messages through mutual friends. Each contact revealed more about his character, or lack thereof. He tried bribing me, threatening me, and manipulating me. He offered to pay back the stolen money, to break all contact with my sister, to do anything I wanted if I'd just call off the investigation. When that didn't work, he tried turning others against me. He spread rumors that I'd been stalking him, that I'd fabricated evidence out of jealousy, that I was mentally unstable and dangerous. But I'd been thorough in my documentation. Every piece of evidence was verifiable, time-stamped, and corroborated by multiple sources. His desperate lies only made him look more guilty. Over the next few weeks, the consequences rippled outward like stones thrown in a pond. He was arrested on embezzlement charges. The local newspaper ran the story with photos from our engagement party, creating a stark contrast between his smiling public face and his criminal reality. The article detailed not just the financial crimes, but the personal betrayal that had led to their discovery. It painted a picture of a man who'd used his position of trust to fund an affair with his fiancé's sister. My sister tried to get a job in 3 different cities, but our social circle was extensive and well-connected. Every potential employer somehow learned about her role in the scandal. She ended up working at a call center under an assumed name. The law firm sued him for damages and won a judgment that would follow him for decades. Even if he avoided prison time, he'd never practice law again. But the ripple effects went deeper than I'd anticipated. The hotel staff I'd befriended during my investigation started talking to other employees. Stories spread about the couple who'd used stolen money for their affairs, who'd lied to everyone around them. Hotel security began sharing the footage with other establishments as a cautionary tale about trusting guests. His legal colleagues distanced themselves completely. Partners he'd golfed with for years suddenly couldn't remember his name. Law students who'd considered him a mentor deleted his contact information. The legal community is smaller than people think, and reputation is everything. My sister's former friends began re-examining their own relationships with her. They remembered small lies she'd told, minor betrayals they'd overlooked, moments when she'd seemed just a little too interested in their boyfriends or husbands. Trust, once broken on this scale, contaminated every memory. The social media posts were particularly brutal. While I'd remained silent online, others hadn't. Screenshots of their affair messages began circulating. Photos of them together were paired with timeline evidence showing exactly when they'd betrayed me. Someone even created a detailed infographic mapping their deception. But the real justice came 6 months later. I was working my usual shift at the hospital when a familiar name appeared on the patient roster. He'd been brought in after a suicide attempt, pills and alcohol in a motel room. As the attending nurse, I could have requested a different assignment. Instead, I took the case myself. The decision wasn't about revenge or cruelty. It was about completing a circle. This man had tried to destroy my life through deception and theft. Now life had brought him to a place where he needed exactly the kind of professional care I provided. When he woke up in the ICU, groggy and confused, the first face he saw was mine. Professional, compassionate, completely in control. How are you feeling? I asked, checking his IV. He stared at me like I was a hallucination. What are you doing here? I'm a nurse, I said simply. This is where I work. But after everything, why would you? Because it's my job, I interrupted. And unlike some people, I take my responsibilities seriously. I monitored his recovery for 3 days. Never cruel, never vindictive, just thoroughly professional while he lay there, broken and defeated, being cared for by the woman whose life he'd tried to destroy. The other nurses whispered about the irony. Here was a man who'd stolen from clients, cheated on his fiancée, and destroyed his career, being saved by the person he'd hurt most. It became a cautionary tale told in break rooms and nursing stations. During those 3 days, I learned more about consequences than I had in months of planning revenge. Watching someone face the complete collapse of their life, seeing the hollow desperation in their eyes, understanding the weight of choices that can't be undone, it was sobering. He'd lost everything. His career, his reputation, his freedom, his health, his family's respect. The sister who'd once called him brilliant now refused to take his calls. The friends who'd admired his success had vanished when scandal hit. But most devastating was watching him confront who he really was underneath all the lies. Without his professional identity, his financial security, or his ability to manipulate others, he was just a broken man who'd traded everything meaningful for temporary pleasure. On his discharge day, he grabbed my hand as I removed his final IV. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I had to say it. I looked at him, really looked, and saw what consequences looked like. Hollow cheeks, haunted eyes, the kind of defeat that settles into your bones. I know you're sorry, I said. Sorry you got caught. Sorry it cost you everything. Sorry you're facing the reality of who you really are. But you're not sorry for what you did to me, I continued. You're sorry it didn't work out the way you planned. There's a difference. I finished removing the IV and stepped back. Good luck, I said. You're going to need it. He tried to contact me several times after that. Letters, emails, even showing up at the hospital until security banned him from the premises. All variations of the same theme. He'd made a mistake. He'd learned his lesson. Couldn't we try again? I never responded. The letters grew increasingly desperate. He'd found work as a paralegal in another state, he said. He was going to therapy. He'd cut all contact with my sister. He'd do anything to earn another chance. But I'd moved on in ways he couldn't understand. The trauma of their betrayal had initially consumed me, but the process of exposing them had been oddly healing. Each piece of evidence I'd gathered was another step toward reclaiming my power. Every consequence they faced was proof that actions matter, that betrayal has costs. I threw myself into work with renewed purpose. The ICU became my domain, a place where life and death decisions required absolute honesty and trust. My colleagues respected my dedication, my patients appreciated my care, and I found satisfaction in work that actually mattered. I also started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping survivors of domestic abuse navigate the legal system. Many had been betrayed by people they'd trusted completely. I understood their shock, their self-doubt, their struggle to rebuild their sense of reality. My experience had taught me valuable skills: how to recognize manipulation, how to document abuse, how to build airtight cases that predators couldn't wriggle out of. I used those skills to help other women escape situations that could have destroyed them. The work was emotionally demanding but deeply satisfying. Each woman who successfully left an abusive relationship, each restraining order that protected a family, each predator who faced consequences, it all felt like justice flowing through the universe. 3 months after his suicide attempt, my sister made her first attempt at contact. She sent a letter through Mom claiming she was in therapy and working on herself. She wanted to apologize properly, to make amends, to rebuild our relationship. Mom asked if I wanted to read the letter. No, I said without hesitation, but I want to know if she's taking responsibility or making excuses. Mom read it silently, her expression growing increasingly frustrated. Excuses, Mom said finally. She's sorry I was hurt. Sorry things got complicated. Sorry the situation spiraled out of control. But she never actually admits what she did was wrong. It's all passive voice and circumstantial language. That told me everything I needed to know about her therapy progress. A month later, she tried a different approach. She sent a video message through Dad, tearfully explaining how much she missed me, how therapy was helping her understand her mistakes, how she'd do anything to earn my forgiveness. Again, I declined to watch it. Tell me, I said to Dad. Does she use the words, "I chose to betray my sister" anywhere in that video? Dad thought for a moment. No, she talks about falling in love, about things happening beyond her control, about not meaning to hurt you. But she never acknowledges that she made deliberate choices to deceive you. The distinction mattered. People who take responsibility say things like, "I chose to lie to you," or "I decided to prioritize my desires over your well-being." People who make excuses use phrases like, "It just happened," or "We fell in love," or "I never meant for you to get hurt." My sister was still living in a fantasy where she was the victim of circumstances rather than the architect of betrayal. 6 months later, I heard she'd moved back to our hometown. She was living with Mom and Dad, working at a local diner, and apparently struggling with depression and anxiety. Part of me felt sympathy for her mental health struggles, but a larger part of me recognized that consequences aren't punishment. They're education, and some lessons can only be learned through experience. The final chapter came a year later. I was at a coffee shop when I overheard 2 women talking about a familiar story. A woman who'd stolen her sister's fiancé, only to have it backfire spectacularly when the sister exposed them both. "I heard she moved back home," one said, "living with her parents again. Can't keep a job because everyone knows what she did." "And the guy?" the other asked. "Prison. 18 months for embezzlement. His law license got permanently revoked." I smiled into my latte. Sometimes justice takes time, but it arrives eventually. That same week, I got engaged again, this time to Dr. Harrison, the pediatric surgeon who'd transferred from Children's Hospital. He knew my whole story. I told him on our 3rd date, wanting complete honesty from the start. His response was perfect. Their loss, my gain. Our courtship was deliberately transparent. No secret meetings, no hidden messages, no deception of any kind. He introduced me to his colleagues immediately. I brought him to family dinners from the beginning. We built trust through consistency and openness. Harrison was everything my ex-fiancé had pretended to be. Genuinely kind, intellectually honest, emotionally available. He didn't see my success as competition or my family's money as opportunity. He saw me as an equal partner worth choosing every day. When he proposed, it was during a hospital charity gala where both our professional communities could witness it. Not for show, but because our relationship belonged in the light, not hidden in shadows. Our engagement announcement ran in the same newspaper that had covered my ex-fiancé's arrest. The contrast wasn't lost on anyone. My sister sent a card. "I hope you'll be happier this time." I didn't respond, but I kept the card. Not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder. Some people never learn. They just get better at looking like victims. The wedding was small. 40 people who genuinely wanted to celebrate love, not just attend a party. Dad walked me down the aisle. Mom cried happy tears. And I married someone who'd chosen me first and continued choosing me every day. We honeymooned at a cabin in the mountains. Not the family cabin. I'd sold my share to my parents, who'd turned it into a rental property. This one was ours alone, with no ghosts of betrayal haunting the walls. On our last night there, Harrison asked if I ever regretted how I'd handled things with my sister and ex-fiancé. I thought about it while watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. "I regret trusting them," I said finally. "I regret wasting time planning a future with someone who was planning to leave. I regret not seeing who my sister really was underneath all that fake sweetness. But do you regret exposing them?" "No," I said without hesitation. "They made choices. I just made sure those choices had consequences." He nodded and pulled me closer. Good. People who hurt you don't deserve protection from the truth. 6 months after our wedding, I got a call from Mom. My sister wanted to attend Christmas dinner. She claimed she'd learned from her mistakes and wanted to rebuild our relationship. What should I tell her? Mom asked. I thought about forgiveness, about second chances, about the kind of person I wanted to be. Then I remembered finding them in our childhood bedroom, laughing about how naive I was. Tell her we're spending Christmas with my husband's family, I said. People who know what loyalty means. Some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. The request for reconciliation came through multiple channels over the following months. My sister tried reaching out through cousins, family friends, even our childhood pastor. Each messenger carried the same story. She was truly sorry. She'd grown from the experience. She wanted her sister back. But growth and consequence aren't the same thing. A person can learn from their mistakes while still living with the results of their choices. I'd built a new life based on trust, honesty, and genuine connection. Inviting someone back who'd proven capable of such calculated deception would be like installing a door that had already shown it couldn't lock. A year and a half later, during a family barbecue at my uncle's house, my sister showed up uninvited. She'd lost weight, looked older, and carried herself with a defeated posture I'd never seen before. She approached me while I was helping with dessert, away from the main crowd. I know you don't want to talk to me, she said quietly, but I need you to know that I understand what I did now. The therapy helped me see how deeply I hurt you. I continued arranging cookies on a plate without looking up. I was jealous, she continued. I've been jealous of you our whole lives. Everything came so easily to you. Grades, friends, dad's approval. When he showed interest in me, it felt like finally winning something. I stopped arranging cookies and looked at her directly. You still don't get it, I said calmly. This wasn't about jealousy or competition. This was about you deciding my feelings didn't matter, about choosing to hurt someone who loved you. But I understand that now. No, you understand the consequences now. There's a difference. She tried to continue the conversation, but I walked away from her and rejoined the main group. She didn't follow. Later that evening, Mom pulled me aside. She's been struggling, Mom said gently. The depression, the job situation, the isolation. Maybe you could consider... I understand she's struggling, I interrupted. But her struggles are consequences of her choices. I can feel sympathy for her situation without putting myself back in position to be hurt again. Mom looked sad but nodded. I just hate seeing our family torn apart. Our family wasn't torn apart by my response to betrayal, I said. It was torn apart by the betrayal itself. The distinction mattered, and I could see Mom beginning to understand it. Last month, I heard through Dad that my ex-fiancé had been released from prison. He was working construction now, living in a studio apartment, trying to rebuild his life from nothing. My sister had finally found stable employment as a night shift janitor at an office building across town. She lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment, having never found another relationship after their affair imploded. I felt nothing hearing their updates. Not satisfaction, not pity, not curiosity. Just nothing. That's when I knew I'd truly moved on, when the people who'd once had the power to destroy me had become footnotes in someone else's cautionary tale. The real gift I'd given my sister wasn't revenge. It was consequences. The opportunity to learn who she really was when her actions finally caught up with her. Some people call what I did cruel. I call it educational. Recently, I started mentoring young nurses in the ICU. I teach them about patient care, medical procedures, and professional boundaries. But I also share lessons about trust, about recognizing red flags, about understanding that people's actions reveal their character more clearly than their words. One mentee asked me how I'd learned to read people so well. Experience, I told her, and paying attention to what people do when they think no one's watching. During one mentoring session, a young nurse named Rebecca confided that her sister had been acting strangely around her boyfriend. Small things. Too much interest in his work schedule, offering to help with errands when he was involved, asking detailed questions about their relationship. Trust your instincts, I told her. People who respect relationships maintain appropriate boundaries without being asked. Rebecca later discovered her sister had been texting her boyfriend inappropriate messages. Because she'd been paying attention to the warning signs, she addressed it before it escalated into a full affair. The cycle of betrayal stopped before it could complete itself. That's what education looks like in practice. Not just learning from your own experiences, but helping others recognize patterns that could hurt them. The girl who once cried over her sister's betrayal is gone. In her place is a woman who knows her worth and accepts nothing less than complete devotion. That's the person I became when I stopped letting other people define my value. These days I sleep very well, next to someone who chose me first and continues choosing me every day. Someone who would never make me wonder if I'm enough, because he tells me I'm more than enough every morning when we wake up together. Our life is built on a foundation of transparency. We share passwords, schedules, thoughts, and dreams, not because we don't trust each other, but because we understand that real intimacy requires complete honesty. When Harrison comes home from surgery, he tells me about his day. When I finish a difficult shift, I share my challenges with him. We don't have secrets because we don't need them. That's what love looks like when it's real. Not hidden meetings and stolen moments, but open doors and shared dreams. The contrast between my two relationships taught me that betrayal isn't just about the act itself. It's about the mindset that makes betrayal possible. People who truly love you don't compartmentalize their feelings. They don't create separate versions of themselves for different people. My sister and ex-fiancé weren't just cheating on me. They were cheating on themselves, creating false identities to justify their actions. The cruelty in their words that day in the bedroom revealed who they really were when they thought no one was listening. But someone was always listening, and someone was always watching. 2 years later, Harrison and I bought our first house together. During the housewarming party, one of his colleagues asked about my family. Just my parents, I said simply. I'm an only child now. Harrison squeezed my hand supportively. He understood that family isn't just about blood. It's about people who choose to love and protect each other consistently. Some guests seemed puzzled by my answer, but Harrison never questioned it. He'd seen the evidence of what my sister had done, understood the depth of the betrayal, and respected my decision to prioritize my own well-being over maintaining appearances. That night, as we cleaned up after the party, he brought up something that had been on his mind. "I've been thinking about what you said earlier," he said, "about being an only child now." I paused in washing glasses, waiting for him to continue. "I understand why you made that choice," he said, "but I want you to know that if you ever change your mind, if you ever want to try reconciliation, I'll support whatever you decide." "I appreciate that," I said, "but some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some relationships serve their purpose, and then end." He nodded thoughtfully. "You know what's interesting? You're one of the most forgiving people I know, with patience, with friends, with strangers. But when it comes to people who've deliberately tried to destroy you, you have clear boundaries." "It's not about forgiveness," I explained. "I forgave them both a long time ago for my own peace of mind. But forgiveness doesn't require relationship restoration. I can wish them well from a distance while protecting myself from future harm." The distinction between forgiveness and reconciliation is something many people don't understand. Forgiveness is releasing anger and resentment for your own healing. Reconciliation is rebuilding trust and relationship, which requires both parties to change. I'd done the work of forgiveness. They'd never done the work required for reconciliation. 6 months ago, we learned we're expecting our first child. The pregnancy brought unexpected emotions, joy, excitement, but also a strange sadness about family dynamics my child would never know. Harrison noticed my mood one evening as we looked at ultrasound pictures. "What's on your mind?" he asked gently. "I was thinking about family stories," I said, "about aunts and uncles and cousins, about the extended family our child won't have." "Our child will have what matters most," he replied. "Parents who love each other and love them, grandparents who model healthy relationships, friends who become chosen family." He was right. Our child would grow up understanding that love is demonstrated through actions, not just words. That trust is earned through consistency, not demanded through guilt. That healthy relationships require mutual respect and honesty. These are better lessons than any extended family could provide. Last week, Mom called with news. My sister had gotten engaged to someone she'd met in therapy, a man who knew her whole story and was willing to start fresh with her. "How do you feel about that?" Mom asked carefully. "I'm glad she found someone," I said honestly. "Everyone deserves a chance to build something healthy." "And you're okay with not being involved in the wedding?" "Mom," I said gently, "her finding love doesn't erase what she did to me. I can be happy for her future while maintaining boundaries about my own life." Mom was quiet for a moment. "I think I'm finally understanding the difference." It had taken years, but Mom was beginning to see that forgiveness and relationship restoration aren't synonymous, that I could wish my sister well while refusing to put myself back in position to be betrayed again. The most important lesson I've learned is that some relationships are meant to be temporary. They serve a purpose, teaching us about trust, boundaries, consequences, and then they end. My sister taught me to pay attention to actions over words. My ex-fiancé taught me that character reveals itself under pressure. Together, they taught me that I deserve relationships built on honesty and mutual respect. Those lessons led me to Harrison, to our growing family, to a life built on genuine love rather than convenient deception. Sometimes the best gift you can give someone is the truth about themselves, even if they never learn to appreciate it. And sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is the strength to walk away from people who see your trust as weakness and your love as something to exploit. That's a gift that changes everything.